So how will the right to disconnect change the way we live and work?
Well, here to talk us through these changes on his day off is workplace expert Dr. John Hopkins. Thanks for taking our call, John. Appreciate that. Talk us through it. What exactly will work look like for Australians from tomorrow?
Good evening, everybody. As of tomorrow, Australian workers will have the right to disconnect, which means that they can refuse to monitor, respond or acknowledge any contact from their employer outside of their paid working hours, apart from if that refusal is deemed unreasonable. Now, that's where the big discussion is going to take place between employers and employees, that in the future, what is going to be reasonable grounds for contact outside of their normal working hours.
Who is responsible for deeming what is reasonable?
It's going to vary workplace to workplace. It's going to vary role to role. So that's where the discussion is going to take place. I think that's going to be the biggest impact of this, is that obviously there's a lot of contact happening outside of work hours already. We all have our digital devices now, and over the last couple of decades, we've probably made a lot of kind of bad habits in terms of the ways, or bad behaviours in terms of the way we have a relationship with these digital technologies. So what this law is aimed at doing is actually putting some sort of boundary around our work time and our rest time, so that workers can get adequate rest again and can come back to work refreshed.
Tech has obviously had a big impact, as you've mentioned, and that's offered us all flexibility. Now some workers expect it, even demand it. Does that mean that the employer should say, in return, you want that flex, we want to get in touch whenever we want?
Well, I think it's important to remember that flexible work and flexible contact aren't necessarily the same thing. So that people may have flexible working hours, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're contactable 24/7. So again, sensible discussion around this is probably what the law is encouraging. It's probably also important to mention that around over 2/3 or so of Australian workers still don't have access to flexible work arrangements, and this law applies to them as well.
John, I think we're all excited for this to potentially push back against burnout and exhaustion, overwork. But, you know, sometimes bosses are pricks. So what should you do if your boss, you know, is being unreasonable?
Yeah, what Fair Work have said is that, you know, if there are disagreements in the first instance, there should be attempts to resolve them at the workplace level between, you know, the prick boss, as you call him, and the employee. But if that doesn't happen, then it can become a dispute, which Fair Work can then manage. And there's a number of ways in which they can manage it. They can raise a stop order, and I believe an $18,000 is the maximum fine that they can introduce for it as well.
Reasonable is, I feel like, the sticking point in all of this. Dr. John Hopkins, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.